Day 1246 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 1,045,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 970 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 3 tanks, 2 APVs, 42 artillery, and as of just yesterday, a staggering 6,666 Russian officers eliminated in Ukraine. A monumental figure that highlights the significant human and material costs of the conflict that goes a long way to reveal Russia's broader strategic ambitions to achieve success in ground operations regardless of the cost. Then headed across to the map with some relatively brief surface level updates today, following a complete operating system meltdown of my own. So starting off and adding to the successive wave of overnight Ukrainian UAVs flying into Russia, as we firstly saw drones targeting multiple infrastructure sites in the Russian city of Kursk, located in the Rostov region, as part of a coordinated drone campaign across southwestern Russia. The key targets included the city's thermal power plant, a railway station, and the local Rostelecom communications facility. Quite the overnight hat-trick, and a case of not just targeting military outposts, but also the power, communication, and logistical veins that run Russia's war machine. The Rostov government hasn't formally commented on these specific strikes, but the damage made to the infrastructure in this region indicates growing gaps in Russia's own internal air defense network coverage. Beyond that, and also in Rostov, Ukrainian drones were reported to be targeting the Taganrog airbase. No stranger to these events, with also the mention of the venturing out of Ukrainian UAVs along this direction as far northwest as the Engels airbase in Saratov, some 600 kilometers away. Next on the map, it was the Tula region, which also copped its fair share of the brunt, with widespread reports of drones that hit the area. Local authorities were quick to announce they repelled all 12 drone attacks, although admitting the likelihood of the damage caused, but only expressed in the way of, quote, possible damage due to falling UAV debris. Looks like they're back to the falling debris excuses again. Now to Kursk, with more recent Ukrainian cross-border incursion activity seen on the map, keeping Russian forces on their toes as the 47th Mechanized Brigade of Ukrainian forces have taken positions south of Novyi Put. Of this, Ukraine's 425th Separate Assault Infantry Battalion, Skala, reported on replenishing the exchange fund with a fresh batch of Russian POWs for the taking. So zooming back out on the map, we see these multi-front operations occurring, which brings us to the topic of cross-border activity, and heading to Kharkiv, into the Molova direction, but only with a very brief update to affirm the lack of progression on this nearly 3-week-old Russian incursion point, with Russia now roping themselves deep into the throes of defending this 28 square kilometer patch of land, with realistically only 2 options available to their forces: defend what they have or try to capture more land, because to withdraw is far from an option here, as the Kremlin has bought into the myth of their own mighty Russian army, as such an army could never choose to withdraw and reallocate resources elsewhere, even though they clearly have significant issues with even crossing their own country border along the vast majority of the locations in this northern map. It truly is a fascinating lack of capability. Then to head further down the map, with the biggest changes to be seen coming from 2 points in the east. The first, around Toretsk, by its flanks, with slight pushes of the armed forces of Russia at the locations of Leonidivka in the south and Dialivka in the north. Then as for the second major point on the map, more in the way of this incrementality by the Russian forces to be shown with their latest push near the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast on this Tolstoy and Podubny front, specifically southwest of Podubny. Then as for the wider Donetsk region, a Russian Russian blogger named Mad Dog reports that Ukrainian FPV teams are now using silent, calculated tactics instead of random firing. Essentially, as per Mad Dog, they have become more sophisticated in their operations as they now wait for Russian soldiers to relax, then they analyze their movement patterns, and then deploy swarms of 10 to 15 drones. It was also noted that the Ukrainian army adapts quickly, utilizing silent autopilot drones that are difficult to jam, keeping Russian forces on high alert and disciplined, which has been quite challenging for them to say the least. Then to more activity reporting from around the map, an Excalibur round, which is a high-precision 155mm artillery shell used by the Ukrainian army, and known for its accuracy and effectiveness in striking targets 50 to 60 kilometers distance, sends this Russian counter-battery radar station off on its way. Potentially a zoo park model with radar not deployed upright. Then also seen on the map, operators of the SBS Phoenix unit strike a BM-21 Grad multiple launch rocket system and a main battle tank and a Harman radar, which is another type of Russian early warning long-range radar station that detects air targets up to 45 kilometers away or about 30 miles with an altitude of up to 10 kilometers or about 32,000 feet. Not that any of that matters anymore for this radar station. Then headed across to the news, where the third round of Ukraine-Russia peace talks is scheduled to take place in Istanbul, Turkey tonight in fact, around 7 p.m. local time, which means it will start around the time of this video upload, where the meeting could last for some hours after that. So this round of peace talks follows two earlier rounds on May 16th and June 2nd that made little progress towards ending the Russo-Ukrainian war, with these upcoming talks now expected to be centered around prisoner exchanges and other auxiliary matters, but where Ukraine is still very much expected to push for a complete and immediate ceasefire. Rustem Umerov, head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, will lead the Ukrainian delegation, while Kremlin aide Vladimir Medensky will head the Russian side. This guy again, a low-level Kremlin aide. As for now, the Ukrainian delegation has already met with Turkish President Erdogan in photographed sites reminiscent of the past, where previously those two first peace talks resulted in agreements on prisoner swaps and the return of deceased soldiers' bodies, but had of course failed to secure a ceasefire. Ukraine continues on every like occasion to push for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire supported by the US, while Russia has consistently rejected this option, proposing at best a limited 2 to 3 day truce, but even more limited in that it was only designated for specific locations on the map. Now, as has happened before, and as will very likely happen again, Russia will call on Ukraine to disarm, abandon NATO aspirations, cede territory, and much more, and for terms Ukraine always considers tantamount to surrender. In the meanwhile, Zelensky has reiterated his readiness to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin directly, though Putin has not confirmed personal attendance now, and at no time in the future, based on his own rhetoric, does he even consider this a short to medium term expected outcome. Something we'll only see after one of several things happen, with one key contender in that being when Russia starts to encroach upon economic collapse, forcing Putin to come to the peace table only then. Next up, and headed to another Russian military mobilization blunder segment, this time featuring a soldier, a pit in Luhansk, and a bribe that could buy your life, as Viktor Zurilev served in one of Russia's notorious Storm V units under the 26th Tank Regiment. In November 2024, he was shot in the right forearm, his ulna shattered, but following surgery, the bone still hasn't healed and fingers won't move. He can't grip a rifle, let alone fight, but that didn't stop his commanders from handing him an ultimatum in mid-July 2025, so not long ago at all. Pay 300,000 rubles, around 3 to 4,000 USD, or be sent back into combat. And so, in a video recorded on July 17th, Zurilev lays it out, stating, "My right hand doesn't work, my fingers don't work at all, either I pay or go on a combat mission." End quote. Interestingly, after his initial injury, he went AWOL to seek out civilian medical assistance with a civilian doctor, but when military police caught up with him, he was tossed into a pit in the village of Novoshervona within occupied Luhansk, Luhansk. Upon his return to his unit, he found nothing had changed, no medical commission, no assessment of fitness, just a demand for money. He also said this wasn't just a rogue officer either, as the corruption runs rampant throughout the entire command chain. He names his deputy company commander, known as by the call sign CMAC, as being directly involved in the extortion scheme. And he is not alone, with other soldiers being forced into similar life or death deals, with Zeralev stating that some assault groups have suffered 100% casualty rates with entire squads wiped out. One, he says, lost all 16 men, and so in such conditions, bribery becomes a survival tactic, not a luxury, where it seems all you can do as a wounded soldier, a permanently wounded soldier, in the Russian army is just hope to buy yourself a little more time. Disgraceful. Then headed across to a lighter segment, perhaps not so much lighter, but it does include a dog, as a Kyiv resident shows footage as she helps her dog cope with panic attacks during Russian strikes, because during these air raid alerts, she covers the dog's ears and plays white noise. This helps the dog stay calmer during explosions and the alarm sirens, and a reality that many Ukrainians are faced with. Then headed across to a 5-second funny to round off the video today, guys, as Russia is starting a large-scale naval military exercise in 4 areas called July Storm, involving 150 ships and 15,000 military personnel. But here's the twist. The exercises are taking place in the Pacific and Arctic Oceans and Baltic and Caspian Seas, but with no mention of the Black Sea, completely omitted. Now, the exercise runs from today until July 27th, during which the fleet's readiness for a range of tasks will be tested. But of course, and again, one place they cannot train for naval readiness, the Black Sea, which, by the way, had Russia not commenced the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, their navy would be freely performing drills in the Black Sea right now. And that's what makes this whole spectacle deeply ironic. The one sea that once housed their prized Black Sea fleet, now too dangerous, too exposed, and too contested for them to even simulate combat readiness in. So Russia's July Storm roars everywhere except for the very waters that their own war made strategically irrelevant. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!